welcome Frank and thank you for coming back for another episode of Frankly Speaking.
I keep coming back.
Yeah, you keep coming back, which is wonderful. We're here at the beginning of March, and I'm going to ask a slightly controversial question to start us off. Daylight savings time begins this coming weekend. What's your opinion?
Well, I've always been a fan of daylight savings time, although I understand the history of it. The history of it really went back to safety, especially when you think about kids in school and the fact that in the winter, having more daylight in the morning makes sense from a safety perspective. Although I personally tend to like the light in the evenings after work, tends to be my preference. But I understand the reasons why, and although it's a little bit complicated when to turn your clocks forward and back, really understand the basis of it.
Well, that's a much more nuanced and thoughtful answer than what usually comes to mind for me, which is just grogginess and extra doses of coffee. So we had the board meeting last night, and there were a couple items that I thought were a lot of interest. The first that I wanted to ask about is just the 2024 annual report. You presented some results from 2024 to the board. What would you say was a big highlight from that that you discussed with them?
Well, first of all, it was 82 pages worth of various pieces of data that were supplied from different parts of the organization. And it really just highlights there are a lot of things that we do as an organization. Some of those really around our core services that we provide day in and day out. There's other things related to planning in the future. And we're doing a lot as an organization. The other thing that really came out of it is that when you think back on 2024, some years tend to seem like they come easier than other years, and it seemed like there was a lot of challenge in 2024, even though by the time the end of the year rolled around, we got a lot done. When you think about all the work that took place with the reservoir projects, you think of current major substation project, you think about the meter access refusal process that around smart meters, and then you throw on top of that all the work that went into EES Season 1, changing out our customer system, our customer portal, our finance system, our GIS system, our phone system. I mean, there was just a ton of work that we did. So I would describe it as very well-earned accomplishments, and not just to the people that worked on those projects directly, but those who really backfilled and picked up slack when people were dedicated to those projects. And really a phenomenal year when you think about results, but also a tough year. It was definitely well earned.
Have we ever had this level of activity in a year from your memory here at UWeb? It just seems unprecedented with all the items you just talked about.
From just getting things done perspective, I thought it was a pretty significant year. I think when you look at every year has slightly different challenges. You know, I can think back, 2020 was a challenging year, for example, not just because of COVID, but we also had some weather issues. We had a major wildfire in our McKenzie territory. So, you know, you think about different years have different profiles. Some of them are more reactive, some of them tend to be more proactive projects. So it's hard to compare year over year, but I would describe 2024 as a really significant year when it came to some really sort of strategic, important work that took place and really valuable work.
Yeah, and in 2024, at the end of the year, we also had our customer survey. Mm-hmm. So we reached out to customers, 1,300 responded to fill out a bunch of questions, including ones about trust and confidence in eWeb, their rates of energy, EV adoption, a slew of different topics. And you shared some of those results with the board yesterday. What are some of the top things you would pull out from that survey?
It was really informative. It's like a lot of surveys, I think it's really important to recognize that one particular survey is just a snapshot in time. And so you have to be careful not to overreact when something appears great or appears horrible. You know, I think you have to look at this, some of this information as trends over time. The survey did ask some similar questions to 2022, and we saw dramatic improvement in some of the favorable responses that we got. Things around communications, reliability, interest in programs, awareness in programs and services, water quality. I mean, these are really fundamental things that we do, and we saw significant improvement that led to an improvement in overall confidence in eWeb. That the survey doesn't generate those results. Our day-to-day work generates those results. And so it really is a complement to the people of the organization who are getting things done and supporting customers, interacting with customers. Customers really evaluate us based on their last experience, and a lot of times that comes with interacting with someone in the field, conversations with customer service, building and renovation projects, whatever, storm response. And so I think that's a credit to that. We also, when customers were asked, you know, what could eWeb do better? Communications around disruptive events was one area. General affordability is another area I think people are concerned with. A little over 30% who provided specific responses mentioned ability to control costs and affordability as their number one thing we could do, and in fact maybe even the number one role that we played in the community relative to some of our other programs and services. So I think that's something to continue to pay attention to. Reliability and affordability tend to be the number one and number two things that customers overall care about when it comes to eWeb.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the most interesting takeaways, as well as on both, you know, how we make decisions on the electric side and then also the water side, when customers had to rank reliability, affordability, sustainability, and resilience as well. They put reliability and affordability at the top. Mm-hmm. What do we do with that information?
Well, I think it's really useful to make sure that when we're looking at decisions, we're evaluating budgets and projects, that we remember what our customers care about. And when they're forced to rank things, you know, it's not just, oh, what do you want? Because if you ask an open question, what do you want? You're going to get a whole laundry list of things. When you ask customers to prioritize and rank their preferences, reliability and affordability, probably for the last 2 decades, at least that I'm aware of, were the top two. Water quality I would consider part of reliability in how we ask the question. I also know that because we got really high scores as far as satisfaction with reliability, that affordability becomes kind of the next thing on the list, and we need to make sure that we're considering that in the decisions that we make, especially the impacts to rates going forward and the trade-off between what we're doing and how much it costs. I think that's just a reminder of that. I think it would be a little bit different, for example, if we had lead in our water. I think we'd probably hear, I don't care what it costs, you need to get safe drinking water. So there's a little bit of a hierarchy of need, but I also think it's just a really solid reminder that customers care about the services we provide, but also the impact that it has on their economics day to day. So it's a good thing to make sure we're considering.
Yes, and this was a lengthy report of all the data that the customers gave us, and there's a lot of ways to cut it. How do we apply this to, you know, the work plans or decision making at eWeb? Are we going to use the report in a specific way?
I think when we're looking at priorities specifically, we're looking at some of the high-level goals we have. For example, there's 2 or 3 goals, 2 goals specifically around rental customers, another one around limited income support and what that program looks like. We think we need to make some improvements there. Recognizing and diving into the survey and the demographics of the survey. So we published kind of overarching results. We do have a lot of demographics available from our customers, so we can look at, well, how do people at different income levels respond to these same questions? So it's really a chance to, when we're looking at how we're going to address programs, services, priorities, it's a piece of information. And like I said, it's a snapshot in time. It did come in a year after a major ice storm, So certainly reliability, how we respond and communicate during outages was something that was pretty high on people's lists. But we're also in a period where people have felt significant inflationary pressures the last couple of years. And so I think all those things need to be considered when we're deciding what to do and maybe what not to do. And so I think that's how I know the executive team is planning to use it when we start to look at priorities.
Yeah. Well, looking back on the past month here, what's a team or an individual that you want to give a shout out to for some great work that they did in February?
Well, it really goes back a number of months, and it's really an ongoing tribute. But I think we've really have to take our hats off to those in customer service who have been responding to high bills, high consumption. We've changed over into a new customer system. At the same time, we were dealing with some ICE situations. We were dealing with some estimated reads, which always causes additional customer response. So, those in customer service, we had a rate increase in there. How do you deal with that? I think those who are really dealing with the personal impacts to customers, those in customer service, I think really have a tough job. They've been doing a great job dealing with those situations. Very rarely do we get a situation where we get, you had handled this incorrectly, even though we also know that customers aren't always as respectful to us as we want to be to them. But customer service has done a great job. Like I said, under some circumstances that I think are challenging. Personally, my bill went up in February this year versus February last year, 71%. I had to dive a little deeper, and I usually don't dive this deep into every single bill, but I had to pull out as 29 days versus 28 days, so I had to do some normalizing. My consumption went up 20 or 70%. So yes, there were some rating impacts there. There were some city fee impacts there, but also recognizing that the difference between last year, the average temperature was 39. This year, the average temperature was 36. I have a heat pump. When you get below 35 degrees or so, which means your nights were dropping, the efficiency of my heat pump changes. So significant sort of level there where my consumption went up dramatically, and therefore my bill went up dramatically. And so sometimes you have to dig a little deeper. I know that those on the front line sometimes have to do that and walk customers through a process that they maybe not be overly familiar with day to day, like some of us are.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming back this month.
Appreciate
and we'll
it.
See you next time.
Great, thanks.